We need to also recognize that there's still batshittiness happening all over the world, and especially in the Middle East. And so right now, kind of the world is on the edge of its seat, waiting to find out how Israel manages all of these attacks by Iran proxies and by Iran specifically. And there was a couple of speeches that I just took parts of, really wanted everybody to hear, that were really interesting. There's a woman who is part of the European Parliament. Her name is Asita Kaiko. I can't read my own writing. I'm sorry. But you're going to see, you know what? We'll just put up the tweet. It's Asita Kanko.
There we go. Okay.
And she was born a Muslim, and she has been fighting against radical Islam and terrorism for a long time. And here is what she said about this entire conflict.
Can anyone tell me how raping, mutilating, and kidnapping an innocent woman, parading with her half-naked body on a lorry, chanting Allah Akbar, spitting on her, can improve the life of anyone? How was this supposed to be something good for the Palestinians? The truth is that this was never about love for the Palestinians, but hatred for the Jews. This was not about a two-state solution, but about erasing the Jews and destroying the West. Today, October 7, we must honor the victims and acknowledge the profound impact of this massacre on communities across the globe. Learn at last. Our countries and universities are being taken over by so-called pro-Palestinian demonstrators. Our institutions are being infiltrated by politicians who confuse Hamas with Palestinians, rape with resistance. They betray and endanger the heart of European democracy by standing by terrorists. This danger is not only to the Jews, but to all of us. Radical Islam and its terror groups have no borders. The intention of the Muslim Brotherhood and affiliated criminal organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah is to establish a caliphate on earth. Only justice and the courage to stand for our values can stop them. I will always stand by the victims, by Europe, the continent that grants our freedom and freedom for women like me. Thank you.
Someone needs to tell Macron. Who's going to tell him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Somebody really does need to tell him. I mean, Bibi told him, but he needs to be told more often.
Yeah, he needs to be told every day that he's a giant wuss. And he's
now,
wrong.
I don't know, unfortunately, who this next woman is, but I love what she says about the Jewish spirit and how resilient the Israelis are. And so she compares it. There's a neat analogy here that I thought people would enjoy.
To all our ill wishers in this room and beyond, to those who place clocks counting down to our destruction in their cities, those who pray for our disappearance, those who plan for our extinction, and most of all, those who rejoice in our pain. I would like to tell you about the Japanese art of kintsugi. In this art form, pottery that was broken is mended, stronger, more beautiful than before. In kintsugi, one does not conceal the breaking. One honors what has been broken, and more importantly, what has survived, by highlighting it with seams of gold. Few things amplify the Jewish people like kintsugi. We have a long and painful history. We do not hide the damage. We highlight the repair. Like a vase that has been broken and repaired countless times, we live to tell the story, our story. We rebuild ourselves stronger than ever, more determined. Our will to live, to love, to flourish, and to overcome is unbreakable. You wish to see us disappear into oblivion. By all means, I invite you to hold your breath.
I love that.
It's the thing is they never wanted it to, like the previous woman said, they never wanted a two-state solution. No. They just want to get rid of they want to get rid of Jews. They want to get rid of Israel. And what I think a lot of Americans don't realize, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll say it a million more times, then we're next.
Of course.
How can you not get that? Like, I know there are people in our comments that'll say otherwise, but I don't understand how people in our country don't understand that. Like, then they're coming for us.
Do they not hear death to Israel, death to
Death
America?
to
They're always
America,
together.
right?
It's always
Exactly. It's
together.
like that's why when these stupid college students are like, I'm like, I'm pro Hamas. You're a freaking moron.
Oh
They would kill you in a heartbeat. You idiot.
Mm-hmm.
God, they're so gullible and just so misguided. You can't help these people. We are absolutely next.
Absolutely next. And the people that have the bleeding hearts who try to insist that they only care, they're only speaking out because they just can't bear all of the deaths of these innocent Palestinians, all of these civilian deaths, and how Israel is so mean for killing so many civilians. Elika Laban, who is that gorgeous Iranian woman, the lawyer who speaks so well on this topic, has an answer to people who say, what about all of the civilian deaths?
So sick and tired of. I'm so sick and tired of people talking about civilian casualties and never talking about the cause of those civilian casualties, never finishing that sentence. So go on, what is the cause? For $10,000, what's the cause? You want to talk about violating international law? Do you know that it's required by international law that a government protect its citizens? Since October 7th, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, the Islamic regime in Iran have fired how many rockets into Israel? And how many civilian casualties have there been? You know why the number is so low? Because Israel invests in a mechanism to defend its civilians, the Iron Dome. Conversely, since Hezbollah has been firing tens of thousands of rockets into Israel, what has it invested in protecting its civilians? Nothing. Not a single mechanism of defense for its civilians. This is aberrant. But you know what it does instead? It protects itself. It embeds its military infrastructure in civilian areas. It builds its bunkers underground, under civilian homes. Do they have bomb shelters for their civilians? No, they've never invested in a single bomb shelter for their civilians. Do they have bunkers for their civilians? No, but they have bunkers for themselves. This is literally the definition of human shields. Nobody has a single question about how abhorrent that is, how categorically abhorrent that is. But you want to tell me that these are the guys that are fighting for civilians, those civilians up there that are being sacrificed for their radical ideologies while they're safe like cowards in tunnels. You know how much it costs to maintain the Iron Dome every year? Approximately $100 million. Do you know how much Hezbollah gets from the Islamic regime in Iran? Approximately $700 million a year. That's $1.4 billion annually. God. It would literally need to invest just 1/7 of the money that it gets from the regime, just from the regime, to protect its civilians. So why doesn't it do that?
Yeah.
Why doesn't it do that? And why don't you have questions about why it doesn't do that when you're talking about civilian deaths? You know why they don't have questions about that? Because the Western world, the saviors, don't think that Middle Eastern people can do better than that. They don't think we can do better than corrupted, degenerate, backward governments that sacrifice civilians for their own radical ideologies. So don't tell me that you care about civilian casualties unless you're willing to acknowledge the cause. Because if you truly care about civilians, you know that they deserve so much better than being sacrificed like this.
Yep. Preach. And listen, turn that to America. Because do you think that when these people start attacking the United States of America, because it'll happen, mark my words. I mean, there are like cells probably here in the United States. Do you think your government's going to protect you based on everything that we've seen over the past 4 years? Do you think they're going to protect you? Do you think that your safety is in their best interest? The safety of your family is in their best interest? I mean, I'm just putting it a step further.
We've already seen that it's not, because they keep letting criminals cross the border, and they keep letting criminals commit crimes and let them out on the street.
Exactly. So just keep that in mind.
Just keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. And it's why, I mean, to her point, I don't care if I'm called a xenophobe or not. That, like, water off my back.
Oh my God, nobody cares. Yeah,
do not care.
We've been called everything. We don't care.
But I will say over and over again that some cultures are way better than others. And this is not a controversial thing to say. If you have any sense of honesty, it shouldn't be controversial. And so there's the Tory leadership candidate, Kemi Badenoch, I'm a new fan of hers, wrote a piece about that. And then she was interviewed by some ridiculous journalist who was trying to catch her in some sort of gotcha, and it did not go well for the journalist at all.
Now, you've written this morning about immigration, and you write that we cannot assume that all cultures are equally valid. So which cultures, in your view, are less valid than others?
Oh, lots. Cultures that believe in child marriage, for instance, or that women don't have equal rights. I actually think it's extraordinary that people think that's an unusual or controversial thing to say.
Exactly.
Of course, not all cultures are equally valid. I don't believe in cultural relativism. I believe in Western values, the principles which have made this country great. And I think that we need to make sure that we continue to abide by those principles to keep the society that we have now.
So which particular cultures then would you say are less valid? Because as you've said, your words, not mine, some people think that that is a controversial thing to say. So which cultures would you specifically say are less valid than others?
So it's not about labeling cultures. Culture includes a lot of things. I'm not talking about cuisine, I'm talking about customs. And I think that cultures where women are told that they should not work, I would knock on doors. I'm sure Penny and Jake had this. You'd knock on doors and you'd see somebody at the door who says, oh, I can't speak to you, I will get my husband. I don't think that's as equally valid as our culture. But the point I was making in the op-ed was about immigration, that immigration is something which we need to make sure we get right. We didn't before. And there were 3 things I said we needed to do. 1, numbers matter. I was quite surprised that Rob actually misrepresented what I've been saying. Numbers do matter. Culture matters even more. Who comes into the country is absolutely critical. And leadership. You need to start from the top. It's no good simply saying we're going to lower immigration and outsource it. It has to come very much from the Prime Minister himself or herself.
Are you saying, though, that if somebody in their culture who lives here in the UK, who might be a British citizen, who answered the door to you and said, I won't speak to you, I'd like you to speak to my husband instead, are you saying, you have said their culture is less valid, are you saying that people with those beliefs shouldn't be welcome in the UK?
I am saying that if we want to have a well-integrated society, we need to make sure that we have a shared culture and a shared identity.
Yes.
This is a multi-ethnic society. That's obvious.
Exactly.
I'm a black woman sitting here talking to you. But there is a difference between being multi-ethnic and being multicultural. I grew up in a place that was multicultural, and yet everybody looked the same. Conflict arises when you emphasize difference. We need to emphasize the things that we share. Being British, British values, the things that we talked about, freedom, equal rights, personal responsibility, not discriminating people because of their sexual orientation. There are some cultures that do that. I don't think that a culture that thinks gay people should be stoned is as valid as ours. This is not a controversial thing to say.
Right. And then listen,
Why is this hard?
If some cultures weren't better than others, then why are so many people clamoring to get into the United States? Why?